probably let people ask some of the questions which they might have for Nandan, or otherwise maybe I can start and people can push the questions later. So one of the questions, Nandan, we had, and today, earlier in the day, we were talking about, if you look at the internet economy and consumer internet economy in India, one of the challenges which most of the platforms are facing today is from last 1 year or so, as we call in our parlance, ATU, which is the average transacting user. For most of the platforms, it's been flattening.
ATU.
ATU. So if you look at the growth rate of most of the product commerce platforms in India, not doing very well. And if you try to do diagnosis of that, ATU is one of the...
What is the ATU for these guys?
So, okay, just to set...
Ballpark.
Yeah, I'll give you more accurate numbers. So 1.3 billion, let's say, is the Aadhaar. 350 million is UPI. The ATU for the product commerce in India would be about 200 million average transacting user. And when you cut down that 200 million to the MTU, which is the monthly transacting user, it comes to about 80 million. So just about, you said 80 million UPI transactions in a day. When it comes to the product commerce, all the websites put together does 80 million transactions in a month. And that's not growing. So if you ask any of the large product commerce platforms, this is the problem which they're trying to solve. How can we make more people transact and come onto the product commerce, online product commerce? So with your example of creating some of these technology platforms at scale, what would be your advice to some of these platforms on how can they really go on a high growth path for ATU?
Well, I don't think these are issues that you get sorted out in a short, it's not a quarterly thing, right? But fundamentally, everything that we are doing is putting in infrastructure at the scale of population to be able to do as many things as seamlessly as possible at the lowest cost possible in a way that is convenient to you in your own language. So, but these are all longer termish kind of things. Like you can't predict when they will lead to enormous growth. So I think it's going to be, you're going to get to the first 10 million, 20 million, 50 million, and you can spend a lot of money, get the consumer base. But after that, the people, so unless the economy improves, more people get richer, more people get cheaper smartphones, more people have purchasing power. As the incomes go, then they spend less on essentials and more on discretionary, which brings them back to the apps. So all these are like trends, but they don't, you can't solve this in a quarter or 2 quarters. That's the mental model. But everything that's happening will ultimately enable the universe of things like product commerce to go up. But also I think the ONDC and hyperlocal will also create a new class of people who will come to e-commerce, because they will come because it's convenient for them to order from the neighborhood store in the shopping complex, and there'll be some guy who will deliver it to you in a few minutes. So suddenly people who did not think of e-commerce, they won't think of it as e-commerce, they'll think of it as convenience. They will start coming, and they will bring, and the number of people who will bring users to commerce will go up. So, right? So today, who comes to commerce? You have to go to the platforms, the big platforms. But tomorrow, anyone who has a consumer-facing interaction can bring in commerce into his app. So suddenly, the number of points of onboarding people into e-commerce will go from just 1, 2, or 3 monolithic e-commerce platforms to 10 different apps that people use. That will also increase. So it may not benefit one guy, but as in country, it will benefit.
Got it. No, that's very helpful. And just going to the ONDC bit, because you spoke about it. So as you can imagine, as a part of what we do, we keep on speaking to practically most of the platforms which are doing product commerce or are ride-hailing companies or are some kind of a service platforms as well. And maybe if I segment the internet companies today coming out of India, they're probably in 3 buckets. The first bucket probably who are the leaders in their categories, and they are in denial mode. When you talk about ONDC, they'll say, we don't really care about it and that it's not going to work out, or we don't want to have a strategy towards it. The second category is probably the guys who are trying to catch up or probably challengers. So someone who's probably not doing very well in the food, and they would say, look, it's a great possibility and opportunity for them to build a food business because outside of ONDC, the chances of the success for them is low. And third are more like content and other kind of platforms who have absolutely no reaction and clue about what ONDC is. Now, just reacting to your comment about that what ONDC would do is it will open up the space for many more platforms. Just to give you a data point about how the Indian platforms e-commerce is segmented right now, we have about 75 to 80% of 75% of the GMV, as we call it, in India internet coming from the top two guys. Then the 25% is coming from the long tail, and that's increasing slowly. So I'm just putting these two perspectives together, and my question to you would be that A, how do you see that 5 to 10 years down the line, the segmentation of this market share between product commerce is going to look like? And two, what would be your advice to these top two guys, the guys who are in a leadership position and a challenger position? How can they collaborate and do better with ONDC?
No, look, they will grow because it's going to be a large market. Look at credit cards. In India, credit cards grow at 30% a year. So, you would have thought that some UPI came and nothing. So the whole thing is going to grow. But the long tail or the volume will come from the lower things. So what will happen is these platforms will continue to do well because they give a superior customer experience, or they give some Prime and I can watch videos or whatever. They're different value, or same-day delivery. There's so many things they can offer. So they will always have their customers. But if you want to go from 80 million MAUs in product commerce to 500 million MAUs, you need an inclusive approach like ONDC. So it's not about taking it away from anyone. Everybody will grow, but the universe of the base will become larger. And it's true of, let's see what's happening in mobility. Now, the Namayatri application is based on the Beacon protocol, which is the same as what ONDC and all that. It's already doing 50,000 rides a day on auto rickshaws in Bangalore, which is equal or close to what traditional mobility guys are doing. It's a completely different model where there's no commission, where you use Namayatri as a discovery platform. They have some 100,000 drivers on it, so they get discovered in a matter of minutes, and then it's a bilateral negotiation between the consumer and the auto rickshaw. At the end of the ride, you pay with UPI. 50,000 a day without even any marketing. There's no marketing. So that means that fundamentally, and the reason is that mobility is the easiest because in mobility there is no fulfillment. When the two meet, that's fulfillment. There's nothing else. Whereas in product commerce, you also deliver and all that stuff. But product commerce also will take off because then there'll be thousands of suppliers, right? So they'll tie up with some aggregator. There are many aggregators now coming, and those aggregators are building specialist skills to onboard smaller guys into e-commerce. That's what they do. Like the payment companies went and put UPI QR codes everywhere. These guys are going to go and onboard all the stores and suppliers, small guys, etc. And then they're going to be specialist delivery guys. Shadowfax, Dunzo, new guys will come, who will focus only on making delivery experience better. And then there'll be specialists on the customer acquisition side. So PhonePe will launch PIN code, Paytm will do something else, and they will create a user experience for shopping. This is new guys, right? These are not the traditional guys. And they will rely on the supply aggregators and the delivery aggregators to take care of the fulfillment. So suddenly you're unlocking new ways of doing business, which you couldn't do. So I think the whole market will grow.
Got it.
I mean, it's my thesis.
No, I think...
I don't know what you guys think. You're the experts.
How would we solve the inventory problem? Because
What inventory problem?
a lot of players, even growers, have tried to do that hyper-local delivery models. And the point where they fail is that it is very, very hard for the small shopkeepers to keep updating their inventory on any of the platforms, because it's like 1,000, 2,000 products for a grocery shop, and if something goes out, and then that
Yeah,
creates
so
a bad.
that's what I'm saying. There'll be a class of supplier, a class of companies that will emerge who will focus on onboarding these small stores, digitizing their inventory, making sure their inventory is kept updated. The market will create that thing because it'll force, if they want to play in that, that's what will happen. Yeah, you want to say something?
Digitization
This is
helps you with
Tanuj
this.
Bhojwani.
This is digitization helps you, right? Like imagine, so the other side of this is that ONDC is also doing B2B. And why are they doing this? Because we've also created a very long supply chain of wholesaler, distributor, retailer, etc. Right? So even the FMCG companies want to cut that down. If they also get into that same app that Nandan is talking about, what happens is I buy 1,000 packets of shampoo or whatever, right? And then based on how much I bought, and if the sales are also digital, you at least have an approximate inventory already in the app, right? Like if most of my, it's the problem is that today sales are cash or offline or not going through digital. ONDC could also be used to just digitize offline sales. So instead of them using a POS, they use an app as a POS, which is ONDC connected. And once all your transactions are digitized, half the problems you're saying go away.
See, we can't predict which models will emerge because specialists will emerge. You look at what happened in payments, right? You had a bunch of guys who focused on the consumer acquisition side. So PhonePe came, Paytm, Google Pay. And then, and the initial payment transactions were person to person. And then the QR code was there, QR code version 2 and all was. So it suddenly specialists emerged who focused only on merchant side. If you look at Bharat Pay, it began only as a merchant. Bharat Pay never had a consumer app. They just said, we'll be the QR code guys. And they went out and started sticking UPI QR codes everywhere. And then PhonePe followed, Google Pay followed, everybody followed. Paytm followed. Suddenly we have 50 million QR codes out there. Because why? We unbundle the customer acceptance network of QR codes from the consumer app. But if a shop, if that vegetable vendor puts a QR code, she doesn't care which app you're using. Because it's interoperable. So whether you're using PhonePe or Google Pay or Paytm or whatever, you can make a payment. See, that's the power of interoperability, right? So you're unbundling the market and some specialist does only QR codes. So same thing will happen in the ONDC. Specialists will emerge who only focus on delivery. They'll brilliant logistics, they'll figure out AI, how to go there faster, all that. Specialists emerge who will onboard suppliers. Specialists will emerge who create a much better consumer experience on buying. Some innovation will happen here. I mean, if you had told me 5 years back that there's something called Soundbox, I would say, yeah, what is this Soundbox? Everywhere you go, there's one Soundbox that says he has paid 50 rupees or whatever. So the guy serving the dosa can serve the dosa and doesn't have to sit and fiddle the money because the money is being paid on the Soundbox. Suddenly his productivity has gone up. So millions of Soundboxes. So this is the innovation that will happen. Yeah, they're not convinced, I think.
No, we are definitely convinced.
So there were, of course, multiple factors. You talked about 2016 specifically that led to creation.
2016 happened to be a coincidence when everything happened.
So multiple factors that came together for us to create this digital public infrastructure. The problems that we'll need to be working on, let's say 10 years from now, and some spiritual successor of yours will perhaps be working with the government. What tips do you have for that person or those people, right? Because I think a lot of us still have that impression that it's really hard to get things moving, when you're dealing with the government to solve at a population scale, which is why a lot of private companies just solve for a very select few users and typically the top paying users, etc. Right? How does one work at a population scale where government intervention is essential? What tips do you have for people who want to work there?
It's a long session we'll have to have. But in general, my experience is that because India did not have a digital legacy, if you go to the West, technology implementation began in 1960s. There were old mainframes and CICS and this and that legacy stuff. It's often difficult to upgrade because so much of legacy, both technology legacy and incumbent resistance to change. Here we didn't have anything, so we could leapfrog. So in general, my experience is digital transformation is easier than physical transformation. It's impossible to fix the road in front of you, but we can fix the country's payment system. That's broadly what the scene is, right? So I think in general, that's why I focus on this kind of stuff. And I think there's a playbook for how to do this in terms of architecting it, in terms of creating a coalition of supporters, in terms of navigating government. I mean, there's a whole way which I'll be happy to take a master class on for people who really want to do this. But it's there. We know how to do it. It takes years also. I mean, look, Aadhaar I began in 2009. We're now in 2023. It's 14 years. So these things that don't happen in a day. So you have to have the patience of a long distance runner. You don't know when this stuff will take off.
So the initiative for most of these things, they come from the government, or is it more led by a specialized agency like NPCI,
No, I mean,
who
if
propose it to the government and then they accept?
in the case of Aadhaar, it was a government initiative, but it was not visualized as a digital thing till I got involved. And then we said, let's do it as a digital ID. So that was a twist in some sense. It was just supposed to be unique ID. So, and it was government, but I worked in the government and got it done. In NPCI was set up to handle retail payments like ATMs and all that. But because they had worked with Aadhaar to build the Aadhaar payment bridge and DBT, they had expertise in building new applications. And that's how they took up UPI. So they launched with the support of RBI. And post demonetization, the government also became a big supporter of UPI. ONDC was something which the government wanted to support from day one because they wanted to make e-commerce more democratic. So I think they're different, and mobile revolution happened because of the mobile guys. So some of it is government, some of it is private, some of it is regulators. There's no one way of saying its root is here. But for each of these, we can trace the history. 5 o'clock will stop.
It's 5 o'clock.
Okay. Hey, maybe one last question.
One last question.
Somebody from the back.
Okay.
So you've been talking about the democratization of, let's say, smaller transactions through ONDC. Do you have any sense of or any view on the innovation on, say, larger value transactions, let's say, property transactions? Right? I mean, those are the hub of, let's say, black money and.
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of things happening, different states. See, first of all, property is a state subject. So you can't build a national solution. Every state has its own property registration. Different states have done different innovations. For example, in Maharashtra, you can register property without even going to the office. All online, Aadhaar, KYC. So it varies from state to state. But it's not that amenable to a market solution because it's a state activity. I think the lady there wanted something.
Good afternoon, sir. What are your thoughts around digging into India's massive technical talent pool in driving some of these innovations, like AI for Bharat, right, at the grassroots level?
Doing what?
In driving these innovations at the grassroots level.
Yeah, I think maybe we should talk about what we're doing, people for AI, whatever. Just tell her.
Thank you. My name is Tanuj. I work with Nandan since, coincidentally, 2016.
Maybe that's the reason why we are here. Tanuj is responsible.
No, I joined late in the year, just to be clear. But no, what we're doing right now is, you're absolutely right. There is talent at not in the usual places where we look or where usual places who get selected or the alumni of a particular college or etc. And these people are also more likely to have lived the reality of the problems that India faces at population scale. So at People Plus AI, we are trying to do exactly what you're saying, which is bring these people to work on these problems where they understand and care more about. Whereas somebody like me also is more likely to care about, how can I get my shampoo in today or groceries in 10 minutes versus we're trying to build this. So at People Plus AI, we're just starting out. So I would love it if you have any ideas for this, if you write to me and we can go deeper.
Great. No, thank you very much, Nandan. I think it's time's up, but it's been such a great pleasure hearing all your thoughts and very, very enriching.
Thank you.
Thanks for making this trip, and I'll show
Thank
you
you.
the balcony now.
Now I want to see a balcony.